Reckless rider crashed into her mistress. Lesbian age gap domination. Romance accidents, people say. Either ruin your life or rewrite it. Mine rewrote everything. I was threading my red Ducati through downtown traffic like I owned the asphalt. Late afternoon in Los Angeles, sun bouncing off glass towers, heat shimmer rising from the road. I lived for this, leaning into curves, engine screaming, wind clawing at my teal hair where it stuck out from under my helmet. I'd taken the light a little too aggressively, yellow that was basically red, my favorite color. Then the sedan in front of me slammed its brakes. I swore, squeezed my front brake, tried to swerve, and kissed the back of a black Jaguar instead. Metal screeched. My bike jolted. I kept it upright by sheer stubbornness, boots skidding, body screaming in protest. I finally stopped, heart hammering, front fairing scraped, and the Jag's bumper proudly sporting a fresh, ugly dent. I sat there for one stunned heartbeat. Then rage hit. "My bike!" I hissed, kicking the stand down and swinging off. The Jaguar's driver door opened with this smooth, expensive click. Out stepped a woman in a charcoal pantsuit that probably cost more than my entire apartment. Silver hair in a sleek chignon, dark red lipstick, posture like a drawn sword. Mid-60s maybe, but she held herself like time reported to her, not the other way around. She didn't look at me first. She looked at her bumper. Of course she did. Her gaze trailed along the damage, then lifted, finally landing on me. Her eyes were a cold, mesmerizing gray, the color of storm clouds over the Pacific. She walked over, heels precise on the asphalt, and tapped her manicured knuckles on my helmet. "Visor," she said, voice smooth and low. "Up." I flipped it up, scowling. "You brake like that again, and someone's going to climb right into your trunk." Her brows lifted by 0.5 millimeter. "It was a red light. You flew through a yellow like it was a suggestion. I would have cleared it if you hadn't panicked." That wasn't panic. That was obeying the law. Novel concept. Her gaze cut down to my scraped fairing. "You were speeding." "Yeah," I snapped, and then your car decided to cosplay as a brick wall. She exhaled sharply through her nose, the faintest hint of amusement ghosting around her mouth before it vanished. "Name." "Riley." "Full name." "Riley Cruz." I crossed my arms over my battered leather jacket. "And you are?" "Eleanor Vance." A tiny pause. She waited for recognition. I gave her nothing. Her lips curved, almost impressist. "Vance Holdings?" I'd heard the name. Everyone had. Real estate, tech, logistics, 6 industries with her fingers in them. The kind of woman whose net worth got written with too many zeros to feel real. Of course, that's who I hit. "Insurance, Ms. Cruz," she said. My stomach dropped. I stalled. "About that?" Her eyes narrowed. "Don't tell me." "I'm between policies." "You're between adulthood and fantasy," she muttered. She took out her phone. "Then we'll call the police and let them sort it out." "Wait." Panic cut through my bad attitude. Tickets, impound, fines. I couldn't afford any of that. "Look, nobody's hurt. It's a bumper and some scratches. You'll get it fixed in an afternoon." "With whose money? Magic Bike Pixie funds?" She tilted her head. "You live off that Ducati?" "I deliver stuff. Design websites, whatever keeps the lights on. And gas in the tank." She studied my scuffed boots, my patched jacket, my chipped black nail polish gripping the helmet. Calculating. Then she sighed like I was an inconvenience on par with a merger gone wrong. "Phone," she said. I handed it over, more confused than anything. She typed quickly, then handed it back. A new contact stared at me. "Eleanor V." "I'll have my assistant send the repair estimate," she said. "You can pay in installments. Unless you vanish." "I'm not going to vanish." "We'll see." She stepped away, heels clicking. And Miss Cruz? Yeah? Next time you feel like tempting death, do it somewhere my bumper isn't invited. She slid into the Jaguar without another glance. The engine purred to life, and she pulled away smooth as silk, leaving me with a bruised ego, a wounded bike, and a new entry in my contacts list that felt like a loaded gun. I thought that was the end of it. I had no idea I'd just rear-ended the woman who would own me in ways I couldn't yet imagine. I was 34, and my life could be summarized in 3 facts. I loved bikes, I was bisexual, and I was perpetually almost broke. By day, I made websites and logos for small businesses out of my one-room apartment in Koreatown. By night, and sometimes by afternoon, I rode courier jobs across LA, weaving through gridlock while other people screamed at their steering wheels. The Ducati was the only expensive thing I owned, a red Panigale I'd bought used and babied like it was a living creature. I dyed my hair teal to match the custom decals. If you love something, you commit. Or, in my case, you make impulsive aesthetic choices. Rent, gas, chain lube, occasional food. That was my budget. Insurance had fallen off the list 2 months ago. Victim to a slow month of clients and one hospital bill from an especially dumb wheelie incident. So when an email arrived that night with the subject line, "Accident, estimate," my stomach tied itself in a neat little noose. I opened it. The body was one sentence. Attached is the preliminary estimate. We'll discuss terms. E. Vance. I click the PDF. 5 figures. My vision tunneled. I actually laughed, a short, hysterical sound that bounced off my cheap drywall. Sure, I muttered. I'll just sell a kidney. I set the laptop aside before I could throw it, grabbed my keys, and went out. When I didn't know what the hell to do, I rode. Neon bled into the night as I cut through Hollywood, engine thrumming under me. I dodged rideshares and tourists and my own thoughts, chasing that thin line between fear and exhilaration. By the time I parked outside Seraph, one of those pretentious downtown bars with a velvet rope and a dress code, I'd decided on one thing. I needed money. Fast. I had a system for nights like this. Tight black jeans that hugged my thighs, boots that made my legs look even longer, a dark green crop top that flashed just enough abs to be interesting, eyeliner sharp enough to kill a man, matte lipstick, silver hoops. I wasn't stupid. I knew what I looked like when I tried. I knew the kind of people who came to places like Seraph, the ones with money to burn and a taste for pretty distractions. I also knew there was a word for what I did sometimes. I didn't care. The bouncer looked me up and down, smirked, and lifted the rope. Inside, the air was cool and expensive. Low lighting, glass walls, people in designer everything. A DJ spun ambient beats like soundtrack to a sci-fi movie. I made a slow circuit, scanning faces. Somewhere in this crowd there would be someone with a black card and a bored heart, a man in a bespoke suit, a woman with diamonds like armor, someone who wanted company with no strings and no questions. I didn't beg. I didn't hustle. I just existed in their periphery until one of them decided to notice. It always worked. Until tonight, when the universe decided to skip subtlety and go straight for cosmic comedy. She was at the bar, charcoal suit, this time softened by a silk blouse, silver hair down around her jaw, whiskey glass in hand like it had been made to be there. Eleanor Vance. I froze. She felt my stare, turned her head. Those storm gray eyes landed on me, and one eyebrow kicked up the slightest bit. Of all the bars in all of Los Angeles, she lifted her glass in a half-toast and crooked her fingers, summoning me like I was already hers. I considered bailing. Then I remembered the estimate sitting in my inbox and the blinking rent notification on my banking app. I walked over. "Stalking me already?" she asked, amusement threading her voice. "Yeah, I said dryly. I followed the faint scent of judgment. Her mouth twitched. Sit, Ms. Cruz. I'm not a dog. That remains to be seen. The retort died in my throat. Something in the way she said it, cool, offhand, edged with something darker, sent a shiver down my spine I refused to acknowledge. I slid onto the stool next to her. Nice place, I said, scanning the room. You own it? I own the building, she said. The bar pays me rent to sell watered-down cocktails at criminal markups. My whiskey isn't watered down, I said automatically. She nodded toward the bartender. It isn't. I asked them not to insult the drink. Right. Of course. She took a sip, watching me over the rim. Have you looked at the estimate? I glanced. I said lightly. I blacked out at the third zero. You did significant damage. Her gaze flicked to my jacket. My calloused fingers curled around my glass. And you have significantly limited funds. I stiffened. You don't know that. I know your tires were mismatched, your rear brake pads were overdue for replacement, and your chain needed lube, she said. That bike is the only thing you spend money on, and you're still cutting corners. You don't have $5 spare, Ms. Cruz, let alone 5 figures. How the hell did you notice my brake pads? I pay attention. Her lips curved. It's why I'm rich. I swallowed the argument. She wasn't wrong. So what then? I asked. You going to sue me until I'm paying you off from the grave? That sounds tedious. She set her glass down with deliberate care. I prefer efficient solutions. Like what? An arrangement. Something in her tone made heat creep up the back of my neck. What kind of arrangement? The kind where I absorb the repair costs, she said calmly. And in return, you make yourself available. Available, I repeated. For dinners, events, travel, occasionally. Her eyes met mine and didn't flinch. And for whatever else I decide I want. There it was. She didn't bother to sugarcoat it, and somehow that made it feel less sordid and more clean, transactional, honest. You're looking for a sugar baby, I said, and you want that to be me. No, she said, and her voice sharpened. I'm looking for a woman who knows what she wants, who isn't afraid of speed or risk, who understands that everything has a price. I also happen to enjoy control. You clearly enjoy giving none, yet take reckless risks with your life. She paused, head tilting. You interest me. My heartbeat was suddenly very present in my throat. And if I say no? I asked, mostly for form. Then we set up a payment plan you can't afford and destroy your finances for the next decade. She didn't say it with malice, just simple fact. I won't chase you. I won't negotiate. You'll just drown slowly while pretending you're free. I stared at her steady gaze, at the lines at the corner of her eyes that spoke of laughter and sleepless nights, and a lifetime of decisions no one had made for her. I was bisexual. I liked older women. I liked power. I also liked living on my own terms. The problem was realizing maybe those things weren't mutually exclusive. What would you get out of this? I asked quietly. A distraction, she said. A body I enjoy. A mind that doesn't bore me. Someone who doesn't flinch when I tell her exactly what to do. Her lip curled, half a smile. I work with men all day who pretend they aren't begging to be told what to do. It's exhausting. And what would I get? Your debt erased. A monthly stipend. Repairs for your bike. Stability you've apparently never met. Her gaze softened just a fraction. And a chance to find out what happens when you stop flirting with danger and actually commit to it. Heat pooled low in my belly in a way I absolutely refused to name. Say it straight, I said. You want to own me? No, Eleanor said. I don't make the mistake of thinking people are possessions. I want you to agree to follow my rules. That's different. She let that hang. This wouldn't be romance, Miss Cruz. Not at first. Don't delude yourself. This is a business arrangement with perks. I should have walked away. I knew that. Instead, I heard myself say, "What are the rules?" Her smile was slow and predatory and made my skin fizz. "We'll discuss those," she said. "If you say yes." She extended her hand. My brain screamed at me. My fingers closed around hers anyway. Eleanor's house didn't look like a house. It looked like the kind of modernist fortress villains live in right before the third act of a movie. Steel and glass on a hill in the Hollywood Hills, all sharp angles and clean lines, the city glittering below like spilled jewels. A silent driver had brought me up the winding road. The gate recognized Eleanor's car and rolled back without a sound. Every part of this world operated on invisible systems and unspoken codes. We parked in a garage that could have housed a small dealership. I counted 3 cars without staring, different Jaguars, an Aston Martin, something low and red and lethal I didn't recognize. And at the far end, on a raised platform, a motorcycle. Matte black, muscular, pristine. Of course she owned a bike. "Come on," she said. Inside, the house was all cool stone and warm wood, art that probably had names, and windows that made the city feel like a painting. "Shoes off?" she said absently, already heading toward the kitchen. I obeyed before I even thought about it. That was the first red flag. Or green, depending on your kinks. She poured herself wine, me water, and gestured to one of the stools at the marble island. "Let's be clear," she said. "You are free to walk out at any time until we sign. After that, breaking the agreement means breaking my trust. I don't forgive that easily." "I haven't agreed yet," I pointed out. She smiled. "You came here. That's halfway there." She slid a folder across the island. Paper. Actual paper. Not some DocuSign link. I flipped it open. It looked like a contract. Because it was. Non-disclosure agreement, confidentiality clause, compensation structure, expectations. Lots of legal language that basically boiled down to, if I blabbed, I'd regret it. If I broke things, I'd pay. If she broke things, I'd shut up and take it. "The monthly stipend," she said, "will be $10,000. My brain staticked for a second. "That's enough to stop you from taking courier jobs that get you killed," she interrupted. "You'll still work your design nonsense if you want. I have no interest in owning your business. But when I call, you come. When I say I need you at an event, you rearrange things. And if I can't, you can't or you won't?" The distinction punched me in the gut. "I'm not canceling client launches for an art gala," I muttered. "I'm not interested in sabotaging your career," she said coolly. "We'd coordinate. You'll have my schedule. I'll have yours. That's what adults do." I flipped to a section titled Conduct. "No drugs," she said. "No getting blackout drunk when you know you'll see me. Safe riding practices. No illegal racing. You wear proper gear when you're on the bike. No more bald tires, Ms. Cruz." That's a lot of rules about my bike. "You almost turned yourself into a hood ornament on my Jaguar," she said. "If I'm investing in you, I'm not watching you splatter yourself across sunset." I bristled on instinct. "You don't get to tell me how to ride." "I absolutely do," she said calmly. "You don't like it, you're welcome to find another woman to pay off your debts and indulge your self-destructive streak." Silence stretched between us. I looked down at the document again. One line near the bottom, under intimacy, was highlighted. "All physical intimacy will occur only with explicit verbal consent from both parties and within previously agreed boundaries." "Seems formal," I said. "I don't play games with consent," she replied. "We will discuss what you're comfortable with. You will use safe words if we explore power exchange. I don't lay a hand on anyone who can't look me in the eye and say stop, and trust I'll obey. Something in my chest unclenched at that. I hadn't realized how tense I was. You said you like control, I said. I do. Her gaze dipped, then returned to my face. But control without consent is just abuse with better lighting. I'd been expecting a predator. What I got was a woman who scared me more because she knew exactly what she was doing. Ask what you want to ask, she said. Why me? The words slipped out before I could filter them. You could have anyone. Anyone richer, classier, less me. You rear-ended me at a red light and argued it was my fault, she said dryly. You walked into a bar you couldn't afford looking for an opportunity instead of wallowing in self-pity. You love something dangerous enough to dye your hair to match it. You're infuriatingly alive. Her smile turned razor soft. And when I told you I like control, you didn't flinch. You leaned closer. I swallowed. What if I catch feelings? I asked in a rush. For you. Then you catch them, she said simply. And we decide what to do with them. Her gaze sharpened. What I won't tolerate is dishonesty about it. If you start wanting something different, you say so. And you? Her expression didn't change. I don't do romance, she said lightly. I've built an empire on not needing anyone. You will not fix me, Ms. Cruz. If that's your fantasy, walk away now. That stung in a way I didn't want to examine. Okay, I said. Then I won't fall in love. You won't either. We'll keep it simple. She laughed, low and disbelieving. You have no idea what you're signing up for. She handed me a pen. I stared at it, then at the line with my name printed under it. I thought about the estimate, about my bike, about my overdrawn account and the landlord's warning and the way my pulse jumped every time Eleanor looked at me like I was already on my knees. I signed. Her signature was quick and confident. When she finished, she turned the contract around, tapped the page, and said, "Stand up." I did. "Come here," she said. I walked around the island until we were standing barely a foot apart. "Last chance," she murmured. "You can tell me you've changed your mind and we pretend this never happened. You pay me what you can, when you can. We keep it transactional. Vanilla. Distant." My heart pounded so loudly I was sure she could hear it. "I don't do vanilla," I said. Her smile was slow and dangerous. "Good girl," she said, and the way my body reacted to those two words told me I was in so much more trouble than I thought. The first time Eleanor took me to her bedroom, I expected something cold and impersonal. Steel and glass. Minimalist. Empty. It was none of that. The room was massive, yes, with floor-to-ceiling windows spilling city lights across dark wood floors. But the bed was a soft, sprawling thing, layered in charcoal and cream. Books lined one wall, real ones with dog-eared pages. A framed photograph on the nightstand showed a younger Eleanor laughing on some windswept cliff, hair still dark, arms slung around a woman I didn't know. "This is where I sleep," she said. "The rest you'll see later." "The rest?" I repeated. She only smiled. She stepped closer, fingers brushing the lapels of my jacket. "First rule when you're in my space," she said. "You listen. Second rule, you answer clearly. No mumbling. Understood?" "Yes," I said, then caught myself. "Yes, ma'am." Her eyes flashed with satisfaction. "You're quick." She undid the zipper of my jacket slowly, like she had all the time in the world and I didn't. The air in the room felt thicker, charged. I'd had plenty of sex in my life. Casual hookups, drunk mistakes, a few relationships that burned out before they really began. I knew how to flirt. I knew how to seduce. This was not that. Eleanor's attention felt like a spotlight and a scalpel at the same time. I was suddenly aware of every breath, every shift of weight. "Hands at your sides," she said. My fingers twitched, but I obeyed. "Look at me." I dragged my gaze up from the buttons of her blouse to her eyes. "Good." She slipped my jacket off my shoulders and tossed it onto a chair. Her touch skimmed down my arms, firm, assured, testing. "You're used to being the one in motion, aren't you?" "I don't like sitting still," I admitted. "You will," she said, "when I'm the one keeping you there." Heat flared under my skin. She cupped my chin, tilting my head, studying me like a piece of art she was deciding whether to buy. "What are your hard limits?" she asked. The abruptness of the question shocked a nervous laugh out of me. "You don't waste time, huh?" "I don't play with people I haven't vetted," she said. "So talk." We sat on the edge of the bed and talked. It was weirdly clinical. Safe words, past bad experiences, things I liked, things that scared me in a good way, things that scared me in a hard no way. She listened more than she spoke, occasionally asking pointed questions that made me squirm, not from embarrassment, but from being seen too clearly. At one point she said, "I don't hit in anger. Ever. If I've had a bad day, we don't play. My temper never touches your body. That's non-negotiable." The matter-of-fact way she said it made something old and wary inside me relax. I realized, with a jolt, that I trusted her. I barely knew her, but I trusted her. "Okay," she said finally, voice softer. "For tonight, we keep it simple. No toys, no ropes, no cameras. Just us. I give orders. You decide how much of yourself you're willing to hand me." The phrase hit me harder than any compliment ever had. "Stand up," she said again. I did. "Take off your shirt." My instinct was to make a joke. Something about strip clubs and dollar bills. I bit it back. She'd told me what she valued. Obedience, clarity. So I took a breath, reached for the hem and peeled the crop top over my head, dropping it onto the chair with my jacket. Her gaze slid over the tattoos along my ribs, the scars on my shoulder from a long-ago crash. Not leering, not detached, just taking inventory. "You're beautiful," she said, in a feral way. "Nobody's ever called me that before." "Feral or beautiful?" "Either." Her eyes softened. They were blind then. She stepped close enough that I could smell her perfume, something dark and smoky with a hint of spice. "Now," she murmured, fingers resting lightly on my hips. "Let's see what happens when the girl who outruns everything finally stops running." She kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't rough either. It was precise, deliberate. Like she'd decided exactly how this would go and was now executing the plan. My brain shut up for once. My body took over. I kissed her back, hands itching to grab, to pull, to take, but I remembered the rules. I let her lead, let her decide when to deepen the kiss, when to break it, when to drag her thumb across my lower lip and smirk at the way I chased her mouth. "Good," she whispered when I forced myself to stay still. "You can learn." The rest of that night is not for public record. What matters is this. She didn't rush. She paid attention. When I tensed, she slowed. When I melted, she pressed. She asked more than once if I was okay, and she listened when I answered. By the time I collapsed against her, muscles trembling with a cocktail of adrenaline, fear, and something startlingly like joy, the contract in the kitchen felt almost irrelevant. We'd made a different kind of agreement, one written in trust and breath, and the quiet, stunned way she held me afterwards, hand stroking my hair. "You did well," she said into the dark. "I didn't expect you to surrender that quickly." "I didn't." I mumbled into her collarbone. "I just stopped fighting." "Against what?" "Everything," I admitted, surprising myself. She kissed the top of my head. Get some sleep, Riley. For the first time in a long time, I did. Being Eleanor's arrangement was nothing like the sugar baby stereotypes in my head. Yes, there was money. An obscene amount, by my standards. The first time 10 grand hit my account, I refreshed my banking app twice, convinced it was a mistake. She'd transferred repair payments directly to the body shop and the Ducati mechanic she'd insisted I use. "You'll wear real gear," she'd said, tossing me a new armored jacket and boots that felt like they belonged in a movie. "I'm not watching you smear yourself across the 101 in a hoodie." I still worked. She'd raised an eyebrow when I told her that. "You don't have to," she said. "That's the point." "If I stop," I said, "I become your pet. I'm not doing that." Her lips curved. "I don't want a pet. I want a woman with teeth." A beat. "Fine. Work. But we sync calendars." So we did. I found myself living in two worlds. In one, I was still Riley the freelancer, building websites for yoga studios and tattoo shops, drinking cheap coffee, wearing ripped jeans and band tees. In the other, I was Riley in tailored dresses and sharp heels, on Eleanor's arm at charity galas and board dinners, wearing jewelry I was afraid to breathe on. She taught me quickly when to smile, when to stay quiet, how to field condescending questions from men who assumed I was a midlife crisis accessory. "This is Ms. Cruz," she'd say coolly when someone hinted. "She owns her own business. I trust her eye more than my entire branding department." It threw people. It threw me. I started to see a different side of her the more we moved through her world. In meetings, she was surgical. Calm, relentless, unwilling to waste time. She could gut an argument with one question. She loathed inefficiency, despised flattery, rewarded competence. And yet, late at night on her couch with a glass of wine in hand and my feet in her lap, she'd tell me about the first apartment she'd ever rented, with a leaky ceiling and a roommate who stole her cereal. "I slept with contracts under my pillow," she admitted once. "Ridiculous, but I was afraid the deals would evaporate if I didn't hold on to them." "You were always like this?" I asked. "Sharp. Fierce." "No," she said. "I became like this because nobody else was going to protect my interests." It hit me harder than I expected, because that had been my entire life. Protect yourself. Trust no one fully. Ride fast enough nothing could catch you. Then this woman had signed a contract with me that basically said, "I will catch you, if you let me." The sex, or whatever you wanted to call those nights where she took the reins and I handed them over, was incredible. But that wasn't what kept me orbiting her. It was the way she remembered the name of my favorite taco truck guy, the way she insisted on putting my helmet on properly herself, the way she indulged my rants about bad design with a half smile and actual interest. One night, a month into our arrangement, she handed me a slim box. "I bought something," she said, trying for nonchalance and failing. "You buy things every day. This one's for you." Inside was a leather jacket. Not just any jacket. Red, to match the Ducati, with subtle black panels and armor built into the shoulders and elbows. Quality so obvious I almost didn't want to touch it. "I have a jacket," I said, throat tight. "You have a secondhand relic that would explode on impact." She folded her arms. "Humor me." I slid it on. It fit like a second skin. "You had this tailored," I accused. "Of course." She stepped close, smoothing the lapels, adjusting the zipper. Her fingers lingered on my collar. "I want you safe." The words slipped out before I could catch them. "You actually care." Her gaze snapped to mine. "Of course I care." There was a flash of irritation, not at me, but at the implication. "Do you think I bring strangers into my home? Tie them to my bed? Introduce them to my board?" That's usually not the order people do those things in, I muttered, because I didn't know how else to deal with the sudden ache in my chest. Her mouth twitched. You're infuriating. You keep saying that like it's a bad thing. It's not, she said quietly. Later that night, when she had me pinned to the mattress with my hands above my head, she pressed her mouth to my ear and murmured, "You're mine when you're here." Something inside me thrilled at that. Something else whispered a warning I ignored. Because this was temporary. It had to be. Right? Eleanor's world came with rules, but feelings didn't care about rules. This became obvious the night she took me to a fundraiser in Bel Air, one of those sprawling estates where the driveway alone felt longer than my entire neighborhood. Strings of lights wrapped every tree, waiters floated by with champagne, and everyone smelled like money, ambition, and politely masked desperation. I wore the backless emerald dress she'd chosen. She didn't order me to. She simply held it up and said, "This one will look good on you." And I hated how fast I'd said okay. Inside, cameras flashed, people whispered, men made polite comments about my dress while never letting go of the assumption that I was decoration, arm candy, a toy. Eleanor ignored them. She only focused on me, until he walked in. A man maybe my age, tall, handsome in that effortless, West Coast rich way. Loose tie, tan skin, white smile. He greeted Eleanor with a familiarity I didn't like. "Ellie," he said, leaning in to kiss her cheek, "trying to take over the city again?" "I wouldn't have to try if you'd stop buying playgrounds for tech bros," she replied, dry as dust but affectionate at the edges. His name was Adrian Hale, venture capitalist, philanthropist, annoying. Then he looked at me. "And who's this?" he asked, gaze trailing in a way that wasn't subtle. I opened my mouth, but Eleanor squeezed my wrist, barely, but enough to mean, "Let me handle this." "This is Ms. Cruz," she said. "She's with me." His eyebrows flicked upward. "With you." Eleanor didn't blink. "Yes." It wasn't jealousy that hit me. It was a strange, sharp, territorial outrage. I didn't want Adrian thinking he had a shot. I also didn't want him assuming he'd figured out my entire place in Eleanor's life with 2 words. So I smiled sweetly. "Don't worry, she keeps me very busy." Eleanor shot me a warning look that made my stomach flip. Adrian laughed. "Well, I can see why she would." He offered me a hand. "If she ever gets tired of terrorizing boardrooms, she can join my company. We could use someone with teeth." Eleanor's voice cooled instantly. "She's not for poaching." This time, I felt the warning. She moved us away from him with a hand on my lower back, possessive, firm, and scorching through the dress. The moment we were out of earshot, she leaned down. "What was that little performance?" "You didn't want him thinking I was available." "I didn't want you flirting." "I wasn't flirting." My jaw tensed. "Do you want me to stand there and look silent and stupid?" "I want you to represent yourself with dignity," she said quietly. That comment was provocative. "You're the one who said I'm with you." Her eyes darkened, but not with anger. Something heavier, more complicated. I said it because it was true. The words struck me in the ribs. She never talked like that. She recovered quickly, smoothing her tone. "Let's not make a scene. You're upset. We'll talk later." "No," I said. "We'll talk now." The air between us tightened. Conversations glittered around us like broken glass, none of them ours. She stepped closer. "Ms. Cruz." "Riley," I snapped. "You call me Riley when you want something from me in bed. Use it now." A muscle ticked in her jaw. "This isn't the time," she said softly. "I need you to trust that I'm not dismissing you. I'm protecting us both from very expensive eavesdroppers." I hated that she was right. I also hated that when she laced her fingers through mine, publicly, deliberately, the anger melted into something warm and humiliatingly tender. She tugged me toward the balcony overlooking the city, where the air was cooler and nobody listened. Her voice lowered. You were jealous. So were you. Of Adrian? She scoffed. I've seen goldfish with more charisma. Then why did you get snappy? Because, she said slowly, like the truth cost something, I didn't like hearing you offer yourself with that tone. I wasn't offering myself. No, she said. You were proving you could play the game, and you can. But not with him. Her fingers brushed my cheek, gentle in a way she rarely allowed. I brought you here, she murmured. Not as a toy, not as a prop. As the person I wanted beside me. The wind caught my dress. The city roared below, and something in me cracked open. You can't say things like that, I whispered. Why not? Because this is supposed to be simple. Eleanor leaned in. Her mouth hovered a breath from mine. Nothing about you, she said, has been simple from the moment you hit my car. And God help me, I wanted her. More than the money, more than the arrangement, more than the rules. It terrified me, because this was how people fell in love with the wrong person. Not through declarations, through small, unguarded moments where the truth slipped out before anyone could shove it back into the dark. 2 months into our arrangement, everything felt too good. That alone should have warned me. Routine settled into something dangerously close to intimacy. She'd text me reminders to eat. I'd send her photos of sunset rides. She'd leave a mug of coffee on the counter for me with the exact amount of sugar. I started keeping a toothbrush at her house. She pretended not to notice, but moved it to a nicer holder, the kind of domestic softness that sneaks up on you like a thief. Then one night, without warning, she went distant. It was a Thursday. She'd invited me over, said she'd be late but wanted me there. I showed up with takeout from her favorite Thai place because she always forgot to eat after long meetings. But when I walked in, her office door was shut. She never shut it. Normally, she worked with the door open so she could call for me if she needed anything. Water, a file, my presence like a grounding weight. This time, nothing. I knocked. No answer. I hesitated, then cracked the door open. She sat at her desk, shoulders tight, silver hair slightly mussed. Papers, strewn everywhere. A half-finished glass of wine, her expression sharp enough to cut steel. Is this a bad time? I asked quietly. Her head snapped up. She stared at me like she needed a full second to remember who I was. I told you I'd be late. I know, I said, holding up the food bag awkwardly. I thought you might be hungry. Her gaze flicked to it. No warmth, no gratitude, just calculation. Put it on the counter, she said. I'm working. Something wilted in my chest. Okay. Do you want... I said I'm working. The dismissal was icy. Dismissal wasn't new. She was busy, powerful, accustomed to cutting things short. But this felt different. This felt like a door slamming in my face. I placed the food down gently and turned to leave. Riley. I froze. Her voice wasn't sharp now. It was raw in a way she never allowed. Don't hover, she said. I don't have room for distractions tonight. It shouldn't have hurt. I wasn't her girlfriend. I wasn't her partner. I was an arrangement, a well-paid, emotionally tidy, mutually beneficial deal, but feelings don't ask permission. I swallowed. Do you need anything before I go? A pause. No. I walked out, closing the door behind me. Halfway down the hall, I heard the faintest sound, a choked exhale, like she'd been holding her breath too long. I wanted to go back. I didn't. Because she'd made it clear she didn't want me there. The next day, she acted normal. Too normal. She greeted me with a cool kiss, asked about my morning clients, complimented my new boots. But all of it felt practiced. Like she'd put on her Eleanor Vance mask and welded it to her face, We went to dinner at her favorite rooftop restaurant. Lights twinkling below us, soft jazz in the background, the kind of place where the silverware cost more than my monthly rent. She was flawless, but the warmth was gone. Her hand brushed mine only when appropriate. Her laugh was polite, not genuine. Her eyes kept drifting to the skyline instead of me. Finally, I said, "Did I do something wrong?" She blinked slowly. "What makes you think that?" "Because you treated me like a stranger last night." Her expression didn't change. That alone scared me. I had work to do. "I get that, but you didn't have to shut me out like—" "I didn't shut you out," she said calmly, cutting her salmon. "You walked out. That was your choice." My jaw clenched. "You told me not to hover." "I meant exactly that. I wasn't hovering. I brought you dinner." "I don't need to be taken care of," she said, voice soft but final. "Not by anyone." I stared at her, pulse pounding in my ears, and then I realized something. She wasn't pulling away because she didn't want me. She was pulling away because she did. Eleanor didn't do vulnerability. Not at work. Not in public. Not alone. Not even with herself. Letting someone in, even a fraction, was a threat to the fortress she'd spent her entire life building, and I'd gotten inside without meaning to. "Eleanor," I said quietly, "did something happen yesterday?" She paused with her fork halfway to her mouth. "Drop it," she said. "No." "Riley, that's not an answer." Her eyes flashed. Anger, fear, something brittle. "You don't get to interrogate me. That's not the dynamic we agreed to." "And what dynamic is that?" I fired back. "Because it sure as hell doesn't feel like just a contract anymore." Silence snapped between us like a wire pulled too tight. She set her silverware down with surgical precision. "This conversation is over." "So you're just shutting down?" "This conversation," she repeated, "is over." I exhaled slowly, hands curling around the linen napkin. "Eleanor," I said, "I care about you." Her eyes flicked up, sharp and warning. "Don't." "I'm not saying you have to care back. I'm just saying—" "Don't," she said again, softer this time, almost pleading. "Please." And that was when fear settled cold in my veins, because she wasn't scared of me. She was scared of whatever was clawing its way up inside her chest when I said I cared. The waitress approached to ask about dessert. Eleanor said, "No," so quickly it startled her. She reached for her credit card. "We're leaving." I nodded, throat bone dry. We rode down 40 floors in silence. She stepped out into the cool night breeze, her voice low and stripped bare. "You need to stop pushing. And you need to stop pretending this is nothing." "It is nothing," she snapped. But her voice cracked on the last word. We both heard it. She swore quietly under her breath. "Go home, Ms. Cruz." "I'm not going unless—" "Ms. Cruz," she said again, harsher. "Go." I went. And for the first time since rear-ending her Jaguar, the world felt like it was sliding out from under me. The thing nobody warns you about, falling for someone who refuses to fall back, is that the silence becomes a third person in the relationship. A watcher, a judge, a ghost. And Eleanor's silence grew teeth. She didn't cut me off. She didn't cancel the contract. She didn't push me out of her house. She just disappeared emotionally. I'd text her something funny. She'd respond with a single-word reply. I'd send her a photo from a ride. She'd send back a thumbs-up emoji like a bored aunt. I'd lie in her bed while she showered, hoping she'd climb in beside me afterward like she used to. Instead, she dried off, dressed in perfect silence, and said, "Sleep well," before turning off the light. It was slow suffocation, gentle, methodical. The kind that convinces you must have been imagining the air in the first place. By week 3, I was unraveling. I tried pretending nothing was wrong. I tried working more. I tried writing. Until my thighs burned and the wind left my eyes raw. But every mile I put between us made the ache sharper. It wasn't the sex. It wasn't the money. It was the loss of something I'd barely touched, but already couldn't go without. One night, lying awake in her bed, staring up at the ceiling while she worked in her office behind a closed door, I thought, maybe she never cared. Maybe she's just done. That was when the stupid idea hit me, the one that would blow everything up. There's a website, one I used to browse before Eleanor. Discreet, sugar arrangements, legal, consensual, transactional. I'd never used it seriously, but the profiles were full of men and women offering affection in neatly defined boxes with clear expectations and no emotional minefields. It wasn't love. It was clarity. I craved clarity. My brain told me Eleanor wouldn't care if I signed up. My heart whispered that I was doing it to hurt her. I made the profile anyway. Just a few photos. Nothing explicit. A bio that read, "Looking for something simple. No drama. No masks." It took 10 minutes. 10 minutes that changed everything. I closed my laptop and immediately regretted it. I wasn't cheating. Our contract wasn't exclusive unless she said so. She never had. But this wasn't about sex. This was about escape. This was about finding a version of myself who didn't lose sleep over a woman who wouldn't let anyone close. I didn't sleep that night. I left her house early, avoiding her office door. 2 days later, I got a text from her. "Come by at 8. We need to talk." My stomach hollowed out. She never used need. When I arrived, she was waiting in the living room, still in her work clothes, hair pinned tight, posture even tighter. The only sign she wasn't as composed as she appeared was the wine glass on the table, half full, untouched. "Sit," she said. It wasn't a command, it was a warning. I sat. She pushed her phone across the table. A screenshot was open. My profile, my face, my bio. She didn't speak immediately. Her silence was icy and precise, the way surgeons carve into bone. I forced myself to breathe. "I can explain." "Don't insult me," she said sharply. "You made it clear." "It wasn't clear," I said. "It was stupid and impulsive and honest," she cut in. "You wanted something simple, something I can't give you." "That's not—" She held up a hand. I shut my mouth. A long, brittle silence settled between us, full of everything we hadn't said for weeks. Finally, she inhaled slowly, steadying herself like she was preparing to walk across a broken glass. "When I saw it," she said, "I wasn't angry. That hurt worse than anything. I was relieved," she continued quietly, "because it meant you're not waiting for me to be something I'm not." My chest tightened. "Eleanor, you want love," she said. "You're too brave, too open, too foolishly hopeful to pretend you don't. You want someone who meets you halfway, someone who invites you into their life instead of barricading the doors." Her voice wavered. "And I can't do that." "Yes, you can," I whispered. "No," she said, and there was something breaking under her tone now. "I can't. Not without sacrificing the parts of myself that kept me alive. I built my world alone. I can navigate it alone. And every time I get close to you, She looked away, jaw tight. "I lose focus. I lose control. It scares the hell out of me." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "You could tell me that. You could talk to me instead of shutting me out." "I don't talk about my fear," she said. "Ever." "Maybe you should." She smiled, sadly, bitterly. "You're young. I'm 34. "That's still young," she said. "Young enough to believe that fear can be negotiated with." She stood then, slowly, as if her bones had aged a decade in the last few minutes. She walked to the window, staring out over the glittering city. "I'm ending the arrangement," she said. My breath caught. "Eleanor, don't. It's best for both of us." She kept her back to me. "You deserve someone who can meet you where you stand, not someone who flinches every time you reach for her." "I don't want someone else," I said, voice shaking. You want a fantasy," she whispered. "And I want a life without weak points. We can't have both." A long silence stretched. When she finally turned around, her eyes were bright. Not with tears, but with something worse. Resignation. "This isn't punishment," she said softly. "It's mercy." It felt like a blade sliding between my ribs. Not fatal, just deep enough to make sure I never forgot her. I didn't say goodbye. I couldn't. I walked out with my jacket half-zipped, helmet dangling from my fingers, and the taste of her still in my mouth, the memory of her hands, her voice, her presence still imprinted on my skin. The city blurred around me as I rode. I didn't remember the turns. I didn't remember the lights. I didn't remember breathing. All I remembered was the realization hitting me like a second crash. I'd fallen in love with a woman who didn't know how to be loved. And she'd just let me go before I could ask her to learn. There's a special kind of quiet that hits after a breakup you weren't allowed to call a breakup. It's not grief the way movies show it. It's not screaming or sobbing or burning mementos in a dramatic pile. It's the kind of quiet where even your thoughts walk on tiptoe. I didn't leave my apartment for 2 days. My Ducati sat outside, helmet hanging off the handlebar like a forgotten limb. My inbox filled with client emails I ignored. I lived off stale cereal and room temperature water because the idea of doing anything more than that felt impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Eleanor turning away from the window, her voice steady while her world cracked. "This isn't punishment, it's mercy." I'd heard a lot of lies in my life, but that one hurt the most because it wasn't one. She truly thought she was ending things to protect us both. And in a way, she was. The problem was that love doesn't care about logic. It grows like rot, silent, creeping, irreversible. I'd fallen too hard to just walk away whole. On the third night, around 3:14 a.m., I finally broke. Not in a glamorous, cathartic way. No cinematic tears running down my face. My chest just folded inward. The kind of pain that steals breath from your lungs and replaces it with static. I slid down the wall of my bathroom, knees tucked to my chest, and whispered, "Why wasn't I enough?" And that question cracked me open, because I'd spent my entire life outrunning that belief. On a bike, through jobs, through women and men who were never meant to stay. Eleanor wasn't the source of the wound, she'd just torn the bandage off. By morning, I knew I needed help, real help. Not tequila, not reckless riding, not flirting with strangers at Seraph. I needed someone with degrees on the wall and tissues on the table. So I found a therapist online, Dr. Marin. Booked an appointment. Showed up the next day with bedhead, a hoodie, and the emotional stability of a sandcastle in high tide. She welcomed me into her warm little office with plants everywhere and a couch that looked too soft to hold heartbreak. "What brings you in?" she asked gently. "I fell for someone who doesn't do feelings." My voice cracked, and she ended it before I could ask her to try. Dr. Marin nodded. "Tell me about her." And suddenly I was talking about the crash, the contract, the dinners, the softness she pretended she didn't have, the way she held me like I was the one thing in her life that didn't demand anything from her. I expected sympathy. What I got was insight like a slap to the face. "You weren't in love with her control," Dr. Marin said. "You were in love with the moments she let it go." My breath stopped. "And she wasn't afraid of losing power," she continued. "She was afraid of losing you. She just didn't have the emotional vocabulary to say so." The words hit deep, painfully, like she'd named something I'd sensed but never understood. I wiped my eyes, embarrassed. I feel stupid. Stupid, she said. No, you're grieving. I shouldn't be, I muttered. It wasn't real. It was real enough to hurt, she said softly. Which means it was real, even if it wasn't labeled. I left her office lighter than I'd entered. Not healed, just less drowning. For the first time since the breakup, I slept 8 hours without waking up gasping. Meanwhile, though I didn't know it then, Eleanor wasn't doing nearly as well as she pretended. I found this out weeks later, from the most unexpected source, her assistant, Willa. Willa found me outside a cafe one morning, wearing sunglasses and urgency. Ms. Cruz? Holy hell, I finally found you. I blinked. Hi? I need to tell you something, she said, dropping into the seat across from me without asking. Eleanor is miserable. My stomach clenched. She ended it. Technically, yes, Willa said. Emotionally, she's currently a cryptid haunting her own penthouse. What does that even mean? It means she's pretending everything's fine while drinking $12 tea and staring out windows like a Victorian ghost. I swallowed hard. She told me it wasn't personal. Oh, it was personal, Willa snorted. You're the first person she's ever cared about who wasn't related to her or paying her rent. My pulse thudded. She doesn't care about me. Bullshit, Willa said cheerfully. She cared so much it scared her stupid. I stared at my coffee, heart shaking loose in my chest. Why are you telling me this? I whispered. Because, Willa said, standing up and tossing a card onto the table. She's hosting her yearly charity gala next week. She'll pretend she doesn't want you there. She leaned in. Show up anyway. And then Willa walked off like she hadn't just detonated my entire morning. The card on the table glittered softly in the sun, embossed in silver. Vance Foundation Annual Winter Benefit Saturday, 8 p.m. Downtown Skyspire. I stared at it for a long time. Then I made a decision that felt like stepping off a cliff and hoping the air would remember how to hold me. I was going. Not for pride, not for revenge, not to reclaim anything. I was going because some stories don't end where they break. They end where someone decides to pick up the pieces. The Skyspire Tower glittered like a needle of light stabbing the skyline. Sharp, elegant, unapologetically expensive. Exactly like the woman who owned half its floors. I stood outside the revolving doors in a black suit that fit just a little too well for someone who used to consider clean leather jacket formal wear. My hair was dyed cobalt again, freshly cut, sharp enough to match the edge in my stomach. Why was I shaking? Because this wasn't a stunt, not a flirtation, not a gamble for free cocktails. This was me, walking straight into the lioness's den after she'd already bitten me once. Inside, the elevator ride felt like ascending into a different universe. Crystal lights, warm gold reflections, muted piano drifting through the vents. Floor 56, the ballroom. Doors opened, music swelled. And there she was. Eleanor Vance, standing at the far end of the room in a midnight blue pantsuit that fit her body like it adored her. Her silver hair swept up, her posture immaculate. My heart malfunctioned. I hadn't seen her in months, and she looked devastating. Not because she was glamorous. She always was, but because she looked tired beneath it. Not physically. Something deeper. The kind of tired that comes from fighting a war with yourself and losing badly. She was speaking with donors, smiling politely, nodding, a glass of champagne in her hand. Anyone else might have thought she looked content. I saw the truth instantly. She was performing. Playing the Eleanor Vance everyone expected. Until her eyes flicked across the room and found me. Her smile froze mid-sentence. Her breath visibly hitched. The donor beside her kept talking, oblivious. Eleanor's hand tightened around her champagne flute so hard I thought she might crack the glass. I took a step forward. She blinked sharply, like someone had thrown cold water into her face, and excused herself from the group. She didn't come toward me. Of course she didn't. Eleanor never ran toward danger, but she also didn't walk away. She drifted to the balcony doors and stepped outside. A wordless, unmistakable invitation. I followed. The balcony cold night air hit my lungs as I stepped out. The city glowed below us in 1,000 shades of neon and promise. Eleanor stood with her back turned, hands gripping the railing, a posture I recognized, controlled, bracing herself. I closed the door behind me. She didn't turn around. I told myself, she said quietly, that if you ever came here, I wouldn't look at you. Her voice wasn't cold. It was wounded metal, bent, but not broken. But you looked, I murmured. I always look, she whispered. That is my problem. I stepped closer, not touching her, just close enough to feel the shape of her hurt. I didn't come to cause trouble, I said softly, or to embarrass you. No, she said. You came because you are brave in ways I never learned to be. She finally turned her head slightly, enough for me to see her profile, the tightness around her mouth, the glimmer in her eyes she couldn't hide. You look well, she said, voice thin. I'm trying. A beat. You don't. She flinched. Barely, but I saw it. Work has been demanding. She lied. No, I said gently. Grief has been demanding. Her breath hitched. The truth has a sound when it lands. A soft, cracked note like something giving way. She fully turned to face me then, and the force of her gaze hit like a punch. God, she had missed me, and it terrified her. You shouldn't be here, she said. Quiet. Firm. Fragile. I know. I took one step closer. But you didn't walk away. I wanted to, she whispered. But you didn't. Her composure trembled. You think this is easy for me? She said. Seeing you again, hearing your voice, feeling everything I tried to bury clawing its way back up? I swallowed. It wasn't easy for me either. Anya. Her voice tightened. Why now? Because running never made me free. Because loving her never made me trapped. Because therapy cracked open the parts of me that sabotaged everything good. Because she was the one person whose absence felt like losing oxygen. But I kept it simple. Because I'm done being afraid. Eleanor's eyes closed like the words hurt. You should have come sooner, she whispered. I wasn't ready sooner. And you're ready now? Yes. A long, shaky exhale left her. She looked away. I'm afraid, she said, barely audible. Afraid that if I let you in again, I will lose you again. And I won't survive that twice. I stepped closer until my chest nearly brushed hers. You're not losing me, I said. Not again. Not unless you push me away. She looked up sharply. And if I do? Then I'll push back. A breathy, broken laugh escaped her. Half disbelief, half relief. You always were trouble, she whispered. You always wanted trouble. That earned me her first true smile in months. Small, shattered, hopeful. I'm not taking you back tonight, she warned softly. I can't make that decision in a moment like this. I didn't ask you to. Her brows knit. Then what do you want? I took her hand gently, careful, like touching something holy. Just one dance. Eleanor froze. The gala music drifted through the door. Soft jazz, slow, dangerous in a way only simple things can be. One dance, I repeated, and if afterward you still want distance, I'll give it to you. No questions, no chasing. Her throat worked. And if I don't want distance, then we'll talk. Really talk. The city wind blew between us, cool and sharp. Eleanor looked at our joined hands like she didn't trust the way hers was trembling. "I shouldn't," she whispered. "But you want to." She closed her eyes. "I always want to." Then, finally, she stepped into me. And Eleanor Vance, fortress of a woman, placed one hand on my waist and the other in mine, and let me guide her into a slow sway beneath the city lights. Her forehead touched mine. Her voice cracked open like the first warm day after winter. "I never stopped loving you." My breath stuttered. I never stopped either. The dance went on long after the song ended. Neither of us let go. Eleanor didn't kiss me that night. It would have been easier if she had. Cleaner. Something cinematic to seal the moment. But Eleanor Vance didn't do easy, or clean, or cinematic. She did complicated. She did cautious. She did everything except what she actually wanted. So our dance ended with her forehead resting against mine, her breath trembling against my lips, her hands gripping me like she wasn't sure whether to pull me closer or push me away. And then she whispered what nearly knocked me to my knees. "I want you, but not yet." Her voice was barely sound, more confession than sentence. I nodded. "Okay." I meant it. She needed a soft landing, not a chase. I stepped back first. She looked startled. By that, like she didn't expect me to respect the boundaries she was trying and failing to articulate. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For not forcing the moment to be anything more than it was." I almost told her it was everything, but we were standing too close to the danger zone for truths that sharp. So instead I said, "Get some rest tonight, Eleanor." She swallowed. "You as well." Then she turned, walked back into the ballroom, spine straight, chin lifted, the picture of control. Except, I saw her hand shake when she touched the door handle, and she didn't look back. I didn't expect her to. Some women don't look back because their pride won't let them. Eleanor didn't look back because if she did, she wouldn't have walked away. I didn't sleep that night. Back in my apartment, I lay awake too wired, too raw, too aware that we had crossed a line we could never uncross. The next morning, I checked my phone 13 times before noon. Nothing. No text. No call. No curt message saying, "Last night was a mistake." Radio silence. A younger version of me, reckless, impatient, defensive, would have shown up at her building demanding answers. The me who'd been scraped clean by heartbreak and rebuilt in therapy? She stayed still. "Let her come to you," Dr. Marin's voice echoed. So I did. I cleaned my apartment, worked on client projects, rode my bike along the river until the wind stole the buzzing out of my skull. By 5 p.m., still nothing. By 7 p.m., I'd nearly convinced myself I'd imagined everything. By 9 p.m., I was pacing. By 11 p.m., I was bargaining with the universe like an absolute idiot. If she texts me tonight, I will donate to a charity and stop triple shot espressos and maybe floss more. Midnight. Still nothing. I crawled into bed and stared at the ceiling until sleep finally dragged me under. The message. My phone pinged at 6:12 a.m. I bolted upright so fast I nearly gave myself whiplash. "E, are you awake?" My pulse jumped. I am now. E, can you come to my office at 8? Please. Please." Eleanor Vance did not use "please." Ever. I didn't even bother pretending I needed to think about it. I'll be there." The office. Her building's lobby felt colder than usual. Or maybe that was just me being a mess. Willa spotted me immediately from behind her desk. She grinned like she'd been rooting for this to happen. "She's been in since 5, she said, and she's pretending she didn't get ready 3 times. I blinked. "What?" "She tried 3 outfits," Willa whispered. "Starting with a terrifying power suit, then a soft but still expensive sweater situation, and now," she gestured, "whatever this is." I stepped inside Eleanor's office. My heart did that painful twist again. She was in slacks, a simple cream blouse, no blazer, hair down around her shoulders. Soft for her, vulnerable for her. She didn't stand when I entered, didn't greet me with formality, didn't hide behind her desk. She was sitting on the edge of it, elbows on her knees, hands clasped like she was bracing for impact. "Hi," she said softly. Her voice wasn't guarded. It was terrified. "Hi," I echoed. A long breath left her. "I didn't sleep," she admitted. "I kept thinking about last night, about seeing you there, about how it felt to dance with you again. Eleanor, let me say this before I lose the nerve." I shut my mouth. She looked down at her hands, then up at me. Raw, searching. "I ended things because I panicked," she said. "I convinced myself cutting you out was protecting us both. But it wasn't protection. It was running. And I've never been a runner." I stepped closer, slowly, giving her space to retreat. She didn't retreat. "I've spent months," she continued, "trying to unlove you. And I failed. Miserably. You ruined my capacity for indifference." My breath caught. "Then why didn't you text me last night?" I asked quietly. She flinched. "Because I was afraid," she whispered. "That I only wanted you back because seeing you reopened everything. I needed to sleep on it. See if I still wanted you in the morning." I waited. "And I do," she said. "God help me. I do." My throat thickened. "But not like before," she continued, voice trembling. "Not as something undefined. Not as a situation. Not as a coping mechanism or an arrangement we pretend isn't one. Not as a secret." Her eyes burned into mine. "If we do this again, Anya, it has to be real." A long silence filled the room. Then, "I want a relationship," she said. "A real one. Slow. Honest. Terrifying. Ordinary. Extraordinary. Whatever it looks like, but real." My heart slammed against my ribs. "And if you can't do that," Eleanor whispered, "tell me now. Don't break me a second time." I crossed the room in 3 steps. Gently, so gently, I cupped her face in my hands. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. "Not this time." Her breath shook. "Come here," I whispered. She did. And when our lips finally met, it wasn't reckless or urgent or hungry like the old days. It was slow, intentional, a promise wrapped in softness, a beginning, not a return. When we parted, her forehead rested against mine. "What now?" she whispered. I smiled. "Now," I said, "we start over." Eleanor exhaled shakily, relief breaking through her like sunlight. "I'd like that," she whispered, and she kissed me again. This time, she didn't tremble. This time, she held me like someone choosing love instead of running from it. Starting over with Eleanor wasn't simple. It wasn't some fairy tale switch we flipped, and suddenly everything was healed. It was careful, slow, messy in the way flowers breaking through concrete are messy, quiet, relentless, a little destructive, but alive. We didn't rush. Not the way we used to. Not the way that scorched us. For the first time in our entire history, we treated each other like something fragile, like something worth protecting, like something worth doing right. A week after our office moment, Eleanor texted me, "E, will you go on a date with me? A real one. No penthouses, no obligations. Just you and me. Saturday, 6 p.m. A date. An actual date. Not a show up at my mansion and wear what I tell you. Not a gala. Not a corporate dinner. A date." I smiled at my phone like a complete idiot. Yes. And I'm picking the place." Her response came fast. Terrifying. "Proceed." For once, I took her out of her world, not the other way around. I chose a tiny, cozy, dimly lit restaurant in the East Village. Brick walls, candles on every table, a jazz trio wedged into a corner. It was the kind of place that didn't care about money or status. People went there because the food made them feel things. When Eleanor arrived, the entire room seemed to straighten itself. She wore a dark forest green blouse tucked into fitted black slacks. Minimal makeup, hair loose around her shoulders. She wasn't dressed like a CEO. She was dressed like a woman trying to be seen, trying to be known, trying to be loved. You look, I searched for the right word. Beautiful. Her cheeks colored, actual color, soft pink, like I'd caught her unguarded. You do too, she whispered. We sat. The world softened. For the first 15 minutes, we made awkward small talk. Weather, work, mutual updates. The usual shallow waters people wade through before they decide whether to swim deeper. But then something shifted. She reached for her wine glass and paused halfway. I need to say something before I lose my nerve. I nodded. Say it. I'm sorry. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't rehearsed. It was honest in a way that made my chest tighten. I hurt you, she said. I ended things in the worst possible way. I convinced myself it was noble, but it was fear. Nothing else. I reached across the table. She hesitated, then took my hand, tentative but real. We both made mistakes, I said. We both ran, just in different directions. Her thumb stroked my knuckle, slow and uncertain. I don't want to run anymore, she whispered. Good, I said. Then don't. We talked, really talked, about boundaries, about communication, about the old patterns we couldn't repeat, about what we both wanted now. She listened, not to reply, to understand. At one point she reached for my hand again, and this time there was no hesitation. Her fingers twined gently with mine. I forgot what it felt like to do something ordinary, she murmured. This. A table. Dinner. Us. Ordinary can be magic, I said quietly. She held my gaze. It is with you. And damn if that didn't hit deeper than any mansion or luxury gift she'd ever thrown my way. She walked me to my bike afterward, 6 blocks through cool night air. Our hands brushed now and then, until finally I just reached over and took hers. She let me. When we reached the Ducati, she stopped, hands in her pockets, staring at me like she was trying to memorize something essential. I want to kiss you, she said softly. But I won't unless you tell me it's the right time. I stepped close, close enough to feel the warmth of her breath. It's the right time. The kiss was nothing like the ones we used to share. It wasn't hungry or dominant or urgent. It was slow, careful, like she was breaking a seal she'd been guarding for months. When we parted, her forehead rested against mine. Come home with me? She whispered. Not, come to the mansion. Not, come to my bed. Home. Her home. Our home, if we wanted it to be. I cupped her jaw. Not yet. Her breath caught. Not hurt, just startled. We're doing this right, I told her. No shortcuts. She exhaled shakily. Then at least let me walk you to your door. Boundaries that weren't walls. Back at my apartment building, Eleanor stood in the hallway with her hands in the pockets of her coat, looking out of place and heartbreakingly human. I'm proud of you, she said suddenly. For what? For choosing something healthy this time, for choosing us in a way that doesn't risk destroying us. I stepped closer, brushed a strand of hair from her face. We're not broken anymore, I said. We're just learning how to fit differently. Better, she murmured. Better, I agreed. She kissed me once more, soft, warm, grounding, and then turned to go. Halfway down the hall, she stopped. Anya? Yeah? Eleanor looked back at me with a vulnerability I'd never seen in her. Thank you for not giving up on me. I swallowed. Thank you for giving us something worth not giving up on. She smiled. Not her CEO smile. Not her polite smile. The real one. The one she used to give me in Paris, in Santorini, in the mornings when she thought I was still asleep. Then she left. And for the first time since our crash, since our disaster, since our almost ending, I felt certain. This time, we weren't fragile. We were forming something new, not an arrangement, not a fantasy, a foundation. People talk about intimacy like it happens in bedrooms. They're wrong. Intimacy happens in the small, unguarded moments, the ones that slip out sideways, quiet and unavoidable. The ones somebody like Eleanor Vance spends her entire life trying to prevent. Which is why the night she finally let me in had nothing to do with sex, and everything to do with trust. The invitation she didn't mean to send it happened on a Wednesday, midweek, ordinary, forgettable by every normal metric. I just finished a long session with a client when my phone buzzed. Are you free? No explanation, no context. Just that. Something in my chest tightened. For you? Always. Where are you? Her reply came after a full minute, long enough for me to picture her pacing her penthouse, debating whether to hit send. Home. Could you come? No rush. Just, if you can. She never asked like that. Never soft, never hesitant, never unsure. I grabbed my jacket and left immediately. When she opened the door, I almost didn't recognize her. No makeup, hair unbrushed, loose, falling over her face, bare feet, an oversized sweater instead of her usual sharp tailoring. She looked human and scared. She stepped aside silently, letting me in, then closed the door and leaned against it like she needed it for support. What happened? I asked gently. Nothing urgent, she said. Her voice failed. I waited. Eleanor hated showing weakness, loathed it, built an empire specifically so she'd never have to. So the fact that she'd asked me here meant something had cracked. She took a breath. I had a rough day, she said. One of the old investors came after me in the boardroom. Not professionally, personally. Her jaw twitched. He said some things I usually wouldn't mind. What kind of things? That I only succeeded because my father left me everything. That I'm too cold to lead. That the only reason I ever kept control is because I don't let anyone close enough to see how broken I am. My fists clenched. I hope you fired him. Not yet, she said with a thin smile. There's a strategic benefit to waiting 3 months. But the humor didn't stick. She wrapped her arms around herself, nails digging into her sleeves like she was trying to hold herself together with sheer will. And normally, she said quietly, I would eat dinner alone, plan my counter-strategy, and move forward. And tonight? She looked up, and there it was. The crack. The truth she'd been hiding since the day she let me walk out of her life. I didn't want to be alone. My breath left me. Not dramatically, not audibly, just gone. I stepped toward her. She didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't retreat. When I reached out and touched her cheek, she closed her eyes. Not like she was savoring it, like she was surrendering. I'm here, I whispered. I've always been here. Something inside her trembled. She opened her eyes and looked at me, not with control or calculation or that perfect, impenetrable CEO mask. She looked at me like a woman in free fall, realizing someone was actually willing to catch her. Can you stay? She asked quietly. I nodded. We didn't go to bed. We didn't touch each other in the ways we used to. Instead, she sat on the couch, legs tucked under her, sweater sleeves bunched around her fists, staring out the window at the glittering city, her kingdom, her prison. I sat beside her and let my shoulder brush hers. Just that. Human contact without expectation. Vulnerability without threat. After several quiet minutes, she spoke, again. "Do you know why that investor got to me?" she asked. "Why his words mattered when they never used to? Tell me." "Because I spent years believing I didn't need anyone. That wanting someone was weakness. That needing someone—" She swallowed. "That needing someone meant they could leave." My chest tightened. "And then you happened," she whispered. "And I needed you. And you did leave." I flinched. "You pushed me away." "I know." Her voice shook. "And that isn't an excuse, it's just the truth. But now I'm trying to build something stronger. Not a wall. A foundation." I turned toward her. She kept her gaze fixed on her own hands. "I don't know how to let someone love me," she whispered. "I don't know how to be enough. I'm afraid that if you see too much, you'll realize I've been faking competence my whole life." I took her hands gently, prying her fingers from her sleeves. "You're not faking anything. I'm barely holding it together. Then let me hold some of it with you." Her breath caught. Sharp, soft, wounded. "Nobody's ever said that to me," she said. "Then they didn't know you." She met my eyes. Slowly, so slowly she gave me time to pull away. She leaned into me, resting her forehead against my shoulder. Her entire body relaxed in increments, like each second she allowed herself to trust me was its own kind of victory. I wrapped an arm around her. She didn't move. She didn't tense. She simply rested. A quiet exhale left her lips, warm against my neck. "Anya?" she murmured. "Yeah? Thank you for coming. I always will." Silence settled over us, soft, golden, unforced. She leaned her head against me, and for the first time since the crash, since the contract, since the heartbreak and the ruins that followed, Eleanor let herself be held. Not as a CEO, not as a fortress, not as a woman terrified of being left, as herself, as mine, as someone learning, slowly, painfully, beautifully, how to love without fear. Some nights change you quietly, not with fireworks, not with declarations, not with some dramatic kiss in the rain. Some nights change you because something fragile finally rests without fear. That was the night for Eleanor. After almost an hour of soft silence on her couch, her body warm against mine, her head tucked gently against my shoulder, I felt something I didn't expect. Her breathing slowing, deepening, leveling into the unmistakable rhythm of sleep. Eleanor Vance hadn't fallen asleep beside another human being in over a decade. She once told me she couldn't. Too dangerous, too intimate, too exposing. But tonight, exhaustion and trust slipped past all the gates she guarded so fiercely. Her fingers curled lightly into my thigh. Her cheek pressed softly into me. Her breathing steadied like a weight lifting off her chest. She had let go, and I didn't dare move. Not even to shift my arm when it started going numb. Not even when my back protested. Not when my leg twitched. Because her sleeping against me felt like holding the rarest thing she had ever given: peace. Around midnight, she stirred. A sharp inhale, a sudden jolt. Her hand tightening reflexively on my leg. She pulled back fast, too fast, and I saw the flicker of terror in her eyes before she masked it. "I fell asleep," she said, horrified. "Yeah," I murmured gently. "You did." "That's—" She stood, pushing hair out of her face too roughly. "I don't do that. I don't, Anya, I'm sorry." "Why are you apologizing?" She paced 2 steps away from me like distance might restore her equilibrium. "I let my guard down," she snapped quietly. "That isn't fair to you. Or to myself. I shouldn't—" "Eleanor." She froze. I stood, walked toward her slowly, carefully, giving her all the space she needed to decide if she could stay or if she needed escape. When she didn't back away, I reached out and touched her cheek. You didn't let your guard down by mistake, I said softly. You let it down because you trust me. Her jaw clenched. I'm not used to trusting anyone. I know. And I'm afraid if I let myself rely on you, I'll fall apart. I didn't sugarcoat it. You might. She blinked. Hard. That's not comforting. It's honest. Falling apart isn't failure. It's what happens when someone tries to hold everything alone for too long. She exhaled. A shaky, unwilling admission. I took her hands. You don't have to be strong with me, I whispered. Not all the time. Her shoulders slumped, just slightly, but enough. After a long, tense pause, she squeezed my hands back. Would you... Her voice cracked. Just a hair. Stay tonight? My breath caught. Stay, I repeated softly. Not sleep with you? No, she said quickly. Not that. Not yet. I'm not ready. I just don't want to be alone. Her honesty landed like an arrow straight through me. I can do that, I said. I want to. This time, when I followed her to the bedroom, she didn't lead the way like she owned the world. She walked beside me. Her bedroom was dim and soft, moonlight spilling across the silk bedding. She hesitated at the edge of the bed like she wasn't sure she deserved this kind of gentle. I slipped off my shoes and lay on top of the blankets. She followed, slowly, keeping a careful distance at first. Then, after a moment of indecision, she moved closer. Her shoulder touched my arm. Her breath warmed my neck. She turned her face into my shoulder and whispered, I don't know how to do this. My hand slid into her hair, slow and steady. You're doing it, I murmured. She let out a breath that shook. We lay there in silence, her body gradually relaxing as though every muscle had been wound tight for years. Minutes passed. Then she spoke again, barely, audible. Anya? I should have fought for you. I should have stayed. We both made mistakes, she whispered. Just don't leave tonight. I won't. She didn't say anything else. Within half an hour, she was asleep again, this time with her arm around my waist, her body pressed against mine like she'd found a place to breathe. And I held her until sleep pulled me under too. I woke before she did. Eleanor, the woman who rose before sunrise every day of her life, slept in. Her face turned toward the pillow, her hair mussed, her hand still resting over my ribs. She looked younger, not physically, emotionally, like she'd set down a burden she'd carried too long. I didn't move. I watched her breathe, watched her eyelids flutter softly. When she finally stirred awake, her eyes found mine immediately. For a moment, pure fear flashed through her. Then it melted. Then a smile, small, barely there, but real, touched her mouth. Good morning, she whispered. I brushed a thumb over her cheek. Morning. She exhaled and pressed her forehead to my chest. I slept, she said in disbelief. I actually slept. With me, I whispered. With you, she echoed. A pause. Then she said something I'll never forget. Anya, I think I'm falling in love with you. Not dramatic, not performative, not seductive, just truth. Soft and terrifying. My hand slid into her hair. I already am, I whispered. Her breath shook against me. She didn't pull away. She didn't freeze. She didn't retreat. She curled closer, and for the first time since the day we met, crash, contract, heartbreak, chaos. Eleanor let herself be held in the morning light. If falling in love with Eleanor was like riding a storm, making our relationship public was like handing that storm a megaphone. The first sign of trouble arrived 3 days after our night together, on a Monday, when everything should have been mundane. Eleanor and I were eating breakfast at her kitchen island. She was barefoot, hair down, wearing one of my hoodies because she claimed it smelled like calm. I was making coffee and trying not to stare at her like she was an actual miracle. It was one of those quiet, domestic moments that shouldn't have mattered but did. That was when her phone buzzed. Her shoulders stiffened. 5 seconds later, her entire face shuddered behind that cold, executive neutrality she used to wear like armor. "What's wrong?" I asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she turned the phone toward me. A gossip site headline blared across the screen. Vance airs scene with mystery woman outside Sky Insight, Tech Gala. New relationship? Business merger? Power play? Underneath it, a grainy telephoto shot of us on the balcony, our hands nearly touching, her leaning into me. The intimacy unmistakable. My stomach dropped. "Who took that?" I whispered. "Everyone takes everything," she murmured. "People love to photograph a powerful woman being human." She set the phone down carefully, as if detonating it might cause more damage. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "For what?" she asked, confused. "For being seen with you. For complicating everything." Eleanor's head snapped up, eyes sharp. "You didn't complicate anything. I chose to walk onto that balcony. I chose to be near you. I'm not ashamed of that." Her voice was steady. Her hands weren't. She tried to hide the tremor, but I saw it. I stepped around the counter and took her hand. "We don't have to label anything yet. We don't owe the world a single word." "I know," she said, "but they'll take words anyway." And she wasn't wrong. Eleanor's Monday board meeting turned into an ambush. I only learned this later, when she returned that evening looking like someone had driven a truck through her composure. She dropped her keys, pulled off her heels, and sank into the armchair like her spine couldn't hold her anymore. I kneeled in front of her immediately. "Tell me." She stared at the floor. "They called me distracted." I waited. "And reckless." Another pause. "And questioned my leadership because I had personal entanglements with unknown parties." Her jaw set. "Unknown parties, meaning you." A cold rush hit me. "Eleanor?" "I handled it," she said, "but they'll be watching now. Every move. Every hour I'm not behind a desk. Every whisper. Every sighting." "You're allowed to have a life," I said firmly. In her eyes, something flickered. "Old wounds. Old battles. Women like me," she whispered, "aren't allowed mistakes. We aren't allowed to be vulnerable. If a man dates, he's charming. If a woman dates, she's unfocused." She laughed bitterly. "And if she dates a woman, then she's a scandal." My hand tightened around hers. "We don't have to rush anything. I don't need to be public. I don't need to walk red carpets with you or attend galas. We can go slow." "No." The word was sharp, immediate. Eleanor lifted her gaze. "I'm not hiding you." It wasn't romantic. It was fierce. A declaration forged in steel and old scars. "I hid you once," she said softly. "I lost you because of it. I'm not doing that again." "And if it costs you something?" I asked. For the first time in our entire relationship, she didn't dodge the question. She cupped my face with one hand, steady, warm, certain. "Then I'll pay the price." A shiver went through me. Eleanor Vance wasn't a woman who made impulsive promises. She was a calculated force of nature. She monitored risk like oxygen. So hearing her say that, it meant everything. The invitation that changed everything. 3 days later, she handed me a sealed envelope. "What's this?" I asked. "Open it." Inside was a card, white, embossed, elegant. "Vance Foundation Winter Charity Soiree. U+1. I raised an eyebrow. "You want me to come?" "I want you beside me," she corrected. "Not as a secret, not as a rumor, as someone I'm seeing." The weight of it sank in. This wasn't a date at a tiny restaurant. This was Eleanor stepping into the light with me in full view of her world. The sharks, the competitors, her board, the press, every powerful person who thrived on weakness. This was her choosing to be vulnerable where people could see it. "You don't have to do this for me," I whispered. "I'm not doing it for you," she said. Her thumb brushed my cheek. "I'm doing it because I want you." A heat rose behind my ribs, warm and steady, something like belonging. I smiled. "Then I'll be there." "Good," she said softly. "Wear something that'll make the photographers faint." Her joking tone was a lie. Her eyes weren't joking, they were terrified. But beneath the fear was something deeper: commitment, determination, love, slowly learning its own strength. The press smells blood. The morning after the invitations went out, Eleanor called me from her office. "Brace yourself," she said calmly. "The press is already speculating." She sent the link. A headline flashed across my screen. "Vance heir expected to debut new partner at charity soiree. Who is the mysterious woman?" Then, zoomed photos of me, of her, of us on the balcony, of my motorcycle, of my arm around her as we left the gala. Public now. Exposed now. Irrevocably tied now. "You okay?" she asked. "I'm fine. Are you?" A long pause. "I don't know," she admitted. I closed my eyes and softened my voice. "We'll face it together." Another beat. Then quietly, "I'd like that." Everything was building toward the night she would take my hand in front of the entire city. The moment the fortress would open to the world. Not just to me. The moment she'd finally stop running from the one thing she'd never been allowed to want. A life built with someone she loved. The night of the winter charity soiree felt like standing on the edge of a cliff and knowing you're going to jump anyway. I arrived at the Sky Spire in a fitted black dress, hair pinned up, heart doing its best impression of a trapped bird. Photographers were already outside, flashes going off like lightning. Inside, the ballroom glittered, polished marble floors, cascading chandeliers, a string quartet playing something soft and expensive. People in designer gowns drifted around like they owned the world. But only one person mattered. Eleanor stood near the center of the room, wearing a deep navy suit tailored so sharply the air bowed around her. Silver hair loose, no mask, no armor. When she saw me, her breath visibly caught. She crossed the room toward me, slow, deliberate, purposeful. And just like that, every camera swung in our direction. "Hi," she said softly, stopping inches from me. "Hi," I breathed. "You look stunning." Her voice trembled, but her hand didn't when she offered it to me. "Ready?" she asked. I nodded. She laced her fingers with mine and turned toward the crowd. Gasps, whispers, a dozen camera clicks. But Eleanor didn't flinch. She pulled me in closer, her hand settling on my waist like a claim, and addressed the room in her cool, authoritative voice. "Everyone," she said, "this is Anya. She's with me." It was simple. It was clear. It was everything. A few board members stiffened. A handful of donors blinked like they'd swallowed champagne wrong. But Eleanor didn't care. She had chosen her side. Mine. It didn't take long before the man who'd tried to undermine her, board member Salvatore Grant, approached, smug smile in place. "Eleanor," he drawled. "A bold move tonight. Some might say, reckless." She smiled politely. Only people threatened by progress would say that. His gaze slid to me, assessing, patronizing. "And you must be the distraction." Before I could open my mouth, Eleanor stepped closer, her voice silk over steel. "Her name is Anya Cruz," she said. "And if you think she's a distraction, then you underestimate both of us." He scoffed. "This will raise questions." "Let them ask," Eleanor replied. "I'm not hiding who I care about." The look on his face was priceless, shock tinged with frustration. He walked away with his tail between his legs. Eleanor turned back to me, breath shaky but proud. You didn't have to defend me, I murmured. I wanted to. She brushed a strand of hair from my face. I'm done treating you like a secret, or a weakness, or anything less than someone I want beside me. I swallowed hard. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Her smile softened. Good. Later, after speeches and champagne and 100 curious glances, Eleanor tugged me onto the balcony, our balcony, the same one where everything started shifting. The city stretched out beneath us, quiet and endless. She took my face in both hands. I almost ruined this, she whispered. I almost ruined us. But somehow, you're still here. I'm here because you learned to stay. Her eyes glistened. I love you, she said quietly. Not in a way I can bargain with or outthink. Not in a way I can hide behind business or logic. I love you. Fully. Terrifyingly. And I want a life with you. My breath broke on a laugh that wasn't really a laugh. It was relief. I love you too, I whispered, in all the same terrifying ways. And finally, she kissed me. Not cautiously, not gently, not like she feared something would break. She kissed me like she'd been holding back for years. The cameras flashed somewhere behind us, but for once, neither of us cared. We didn't even notice. Because this time, we weren't a scandal. We weren't a secret. We weren't a mistake waiting to happen. We were exactly what we were always meant to become. Two women who chose each other, fully, openly, finally, and the world could keep its headlines. We had something better, a beginning, and this time, we were both brave enough to stay. The end. Don't forget to subscribe for more long-form, emotional, slow-burn sapphic romance stories.